I'm Rod Gaynor, Command Curator of Arlington National Cemetery. I'm standing smack dab in the center of the Second Battle of Bull Run, fought August 28th through 30th, 1862. There are a lot of connections between Arlington National Cemetery and Second Bull Run, and we're going to be talking about one today, one George Albee. Today I'm going to be accompanied by Russ Muter, the director of the Manassas Battlefield Trust, and Jim Burgess of the National Park Service.
Ranger Burgess, we're standing here on a part of the Manassas battlefield, also known as Bull Run. What section of the battlefield are we actually standing on?
We're on the Second Manassas battlefield on a farm known as Peach Grove. This was the farm of Lucinda Dogan at the time of the Civil War. We're about 300 yards in front of the unfinished railroad grade and a section known as the Deep Cut, where heavy fighting took place on the afternoon of August 30th, 1862.
Who or what were the Berdan Sharpshooters, and what was so important or interesting about them?
Well, Hiram Berdan was a New York inventor. He was also an expert marksman. When the war began, he offered to raise a regiment of hand-picked sharpshooters to serve as skirmishers. Skirmishers would oftentimes be thrown out in front of your main battle line to feel out enemy positions and provide covering fire. The War Department accepted Berdan's offer, and ultimately Berdan was able to raise 2 regiments of sharpshooters, companies from different states of the Union. These troops would have to pass a marksmanship test in order to qualify to be a member of the unit. Each man had to put 10 consecutive shots into a 10-inch target at 100 yards, firing from an unsupported standing position, or they could fire at the same target at 200 yards off a rest. Either way, it was a very rigorous marksmanship test, and everyone in the unit was well versed in the handling of their weapons, which were the brand new Sharps breech-loading rifles, which could be fired standing or lying down in any position. They were very accurate at very long range.
Jim, what would have been the experience here for the sharpshooters, and especially Albee?
Well, around shortly before 3 o'clock in the afternoon on August 30th, the sharpshooters, which were attached to Daniel Butterfield's brigade, were thrown out here into Lucinda Dogan's meadow as skirmishers just prior to a major attack that would be made by Fitzjohn Porter's Union Corps. And the sharpshooters ventured out into the open meadows of Lucinda Dogan's farm and taking advantage of any cover and concealment offered by the terrain. When they got about halfway across this meadow, they found a dry stream bed which offered an excellent position, almost like a ready-made foxhole. And they ultimately became pinned down by Confederate fire coming from just in front of the unfinished railroad 300 yards away. After his retirement from the Army, Albee did come back to Manassas to visit the spot where he was wounded. And during his visit, he decided it would be appropriate to erect some type of marker to commemorate the service of his regiment. And so the sign behind us was put up by Albee late in the 19th century, and it has been replaced many times since that time.
We're standing in Section 2 at the grave of Medal of Honor recipient George Albee, who served in both the Civil War and the Indian Wars. He was born in New Hampshire in 1845 and moved with his family to a farm in Wisconsin. At the age of 17, he enlisted in the Berdan Sharpshooters and was wounded 2 months later at the Battle of Second Bull Run. He was discharged and, after recovering, entered the 3rd Wisconsin Light Artillery. He later became a second lieutenant in the 36th Wisconsin Volunteer Infantry, and in the summer of 1864, while fighting at the Battle of Reams Station in Virginia, he was taken prisoner and spent time in Libby Prison until he was paroled in September of that year and returned to the regiment. He was eventually promoted to first lieutenant in January of 1865. After the war, he became an officer in the 36th United States Colored Infantry and spent time with the 41st Infantry as well. In 1869, he was transferred to the 24th Infantry and retired from the United States Army almost 10 years later on disability. In retirement, Albee was also honored with the Medal of Honor in 1894 for her gallant actions while on duty during the Indian Wars. He died in 1918 in nearby Laurel, Maryland, and was buried here with his wife Mary in what was once an officer section.